Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. Hope you're all doing awesome today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get right into today's revenge stories. Former manager made my life hell, and I finally got her fired. I was desperate to join a new job after my husband and I were both laid off last year. When I was offered a new role, I knew it would be a step down from what I was doing, but the manager and the team seemed great, and that part has not changed. However, since my manager, Gary, was so busy, he basically offloaded me to another manager, Jane. I was supposed to be the connection point between my team and Jane, but it quickly became Jane micromanaging me. She would ask me to work through lunch, move and cancel vacation days, call at 11 p.m. on weekends, and order me around on phone calls. She also made nasty comments about my weight and said I was big for my race. The list of personal slights so long that it filled 3 pages. I would talk back to her and she did not like that, and that provoked her more. I only stayed because we needed to pay the bills. Finally, I had a mental breakdown on a Friday afternoon, after she yelled at me for something trivial about scheduling a meeting, without including someone from her team who I didn't know about. I was dealing with a family tragedy, and couldn't take it anymore. I told Gary about the situation with Jane, and he was sympathetic, and not at all surprised considering half her team quit. He immediately offered to move me to a different team under him. I was thrilled. Well, turns out going to the new team didn't help. Jane continued to order me around from afar. When I ignored her emails, she came to my desk one day and started loudly talking about how I am not qualified for this role. Gary overheard and finally told her off, but the verbal abuse did not stop. After 2 months there, I abruptly wrote my resignation letter and stapled the list of Jane's offensive comments and CC'd everyone. Gary offered a bunch of accommodations to try to keep me, but seeing how she was still provoking from afar, I said the only way for me to stay would be for her to go, and he did not have authority to let her go. Her manager was in a different country, and despite several HR complaints from at least 5 people, nothing was done. So I left, loudly and without shame, telling everyone exactly why I was leaving. Times were very bad for 3 months. There were nights we would eat slices of bread just so we could pay the mortgage and emergency expenses from a health crisis and a funeral. Even after he found a job, we were still catching up on bills, and still are. I spent months applying to 5 to 10 roles per day, sometimes over 20. Last month, I saw a public memo about a big shot from a former company joining the company I just left. I used to work with this guy closely, and texted him, congrats, let me know if you need any insights on the new place. We had a quick call where I told him some ins and outs, where I thought they could innovate. After this call, he asked me to join the team as his chief of staff. I accepted. Imagine Jane's shock when we had our first all-hands call. All the VPs and above were asked to welcome the new big shot in a giant conference room. In Big Shot's speech, he breezed over that I'll be his chief of staff, along with a few key names. I now sat 2 levels above Jane, and apparently within the 3 months I was not there, the other half of her team turned over. Every single person left. Gary was excited for me and said all nice things. However, Jane took the classless route and sent Big Shot an email about how I'm an unqualified idiot, that I used to work for her, how I tried to get her fired, and that she suspects I lied to get ahead. She didn't even try to be fake nice. Big Shot forwarded me her email and asked what this was about. I was so nervous and excited. Little did Jane know, I was a director at Big Shot's competitor company and was already a level above her. So 2 levels isn't a big leap, and I worked with him for 5 years. I had an hour call with Big Shot and told him she was bad for the company culture and was a nasty person in general. But the evidence he needed was Gary confirming that her whole team is turned over. My prior resignation letter, which was still sitting on my desktop when I logged in upon return, and a few other nasty emails she sent her recent staff, which they were happy to share with us. Big Shot fired Jane on Friday. Your lease is still valid, even though you were evicted. Okay. I'll try to keep the details vague enough to keep me anonymous, hence the dummy account. I am the landlord of some apartments in the city. I sign the lease agreements and go over the basics with tenants, although they don't usually want me to spend hours delving into the fine print. 99% of the time it's a breeze, and everything is fine. One lady, let's call her Karen, had been paying her rent via a new bank account and new checks for the last several months. All of a sudden, we got several chargeback fees on our account. She had put a stop payment on the checks and closed the account. I immediately called her and said, "Hey Karen, it looks like your checks bounced for the last few months. I just wanted to make sure everything is okay." "Oh no, I promise I'll get this fixed." "Okay, you've been a good tenant in the past, so I'll give you a month." Needless to say, a month passed and she didn't pay, so I called her again. "Hey Karen, we still haven't received payment, so I'm afraid we'll have to file for eviction." "Oh God, no. I'm an old woman. I can't afford to be evicted. I'm trying so hard to pay. Can you give me another shot?" "As long as you pay before the court date, the eviction doesn't have to go through." The court date arrives, and guess who hasn't paid yet? At court, the judge rules for a 24-hour notice to vacate. Karen in tears comes up to me afterwards. "Can you please give me another chance? I can't afford to go anywhere else." "I'm sorry, Karen, but the only way I could do that is if you paid off the debt, signed a new lease agreement, plus a first month's rent, plus a new security deposit. And I don't think that's going to happen. Goodbye." So I left, and I thought that was that. My maintenance guy would come in a few days and do the inspection and cleanup, and then we'd put it on the market. He shows up a few days later, and there's a problem. They're still there. So I called the sheriff to schedule a set out. A problem though. According to the sheriff, the 24-hour notice was no longer valid, as we had struck up a deal afterwards, so the court had reversed the eviction decision. I had no recollection of having decided that this would happen. I called the court and they informed me that the eviction was no longer valid, as apparently I told the sheriff that I was giving her more time, invalidating the decision, etc. What happened was that Karen had called the sheriff and told him that the court had reversed the decision because of a non-existent deal. She had then called the court and told them that the sheriff could not evict her, as I had waived the notice. And she had used my words, twisting my denial of an extension into a deal. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I sent Karen a copy of a new lease agreement, asking for the debts, in addition to rent for a first month and a new security deposit. Her lawyer then contacted me. Yes, she had the money to hire a lawyer somehow, informing me that, in fact, her old lease agreement was still valid, as my deal, the one that would require a new lease agreement, invalidated the eviction decision. So I filed for eviction, on the grounds that she had not paid for several months now, 5 to be exact, and therefore had invalidated her old lease agreement. And then I read her old lease agreement. I already know these contracts pretty well, but like I said, I don't usually delve into the minutiae. This time I did. We show up at court. Karen has her lawyer. Karen is bursting, grinning like a fool, like she's won the lottery. Her lawyer looks fairly happy as well. The judge asks me to speak, and I say, I would like Karen to leave the apartments, but she is refusing, despite the fact that according to the court's last decision, she should have left over a month ago now. "And Miss Karen?" asks the judge. And Karen's lawyer says, "Miss Karen cannot be ejected from her home without a new notice. Yes, she has not paid past due rent. However, she and the landlord struck up a deal, giving her the time she needed to pay, via verbal agreement. This deal, made directly after the last court date, invalidated the last decision. So Miss Karen will require a new decision, and therefore a new notice, before she can rightfully be evicted from her home. Until then, her lease agreement is still valid. Insert legal crap." "And landlord, what do you have to say?" the judge asked. "Well, Your Honor, I have to agree. They have made a very, very compelling argument. Karen and I did indeed make a deal, giving her the time she needed to pay. And yes, her old lease agreement is still valid, I guess. Well, according to the terms of the still valid lease, there are some additional things that the court needs to be aware of that I'd like to go over for clarification. I'm sure you have a copy, Your Honor?" "Yes, I do." "And you have a copy, lawyer?" "Yes, I do," said the lawyer. "Excellent. Well, Your Honor, if you look at Section 4, subsection A on page 2, you will see that after 10 days of non-payment, a late fee of $100 is applied. If you continue reading to subsection B, you will see that after 15 days of non-payment, additional late fees of $10 per day are applied, until full payment is rendered. If you continue to subsection C, you will see that failed payments necessitate a chargeback fee of $50 per failed payment. If you continue, Your Honor, to page 4, section 7, subsection F, you'll see that if a tenant is in any way responsible for a loss of rent, including leaving an apartment in less than move-in ready condition, failed payments, or lastly, refusal to vacate in the case of an eviction, the tenant is responsible for payment of said loss of rent, in addition to any other debts owed. In addition, on page 8, section 14, subsection A, you'll note that the tenant is responsible for any and all legal fees resultant from the eviction process, including attorney's fees, such as for the attorney I hired to help me review this lease agreement. Finally, on page 10, the last page, section 17, subsection B, you will see that the tenant is responsible for all HVAC services rendered on their unit. As we sent in a company to fix the unit in Karen's apartment at her request, we have the invoice here for the replacement unit, in addition to the totals for all of the fees listed. At this point, the lawyer has gone completely pale. It's clear that he was more concerned that I would fight the whole deal thing than the terms of the lease he thought he'd have to fight to keep valid. Karen looks utterly shell-shocked, her mouth slightly agape, like a child confused by a game of peekaboo. The judge, meanwhile, is completely unfazed, until I hand her the invoice, alongside my maths, a spreadsheet and a piece of paper, with the total debt owed circled and highlighted at the bottom of the page. Her eyes widened to the size of her mouth as her jaw dropped with an audible gasp. And I say, "As you can see, Your Honor, the total owed is in excess of $16,000. I will happily accept the payment in the form of a cashier's check. I'd hate to have to charge yet another $50 fee for failed payment, should another check bounce." And the judge asked, "Lawyer, do you have anything to say?" At this point, the lawyer looks like he's about to pass out. Karen seems to have stopped breathing. The judge remains silent for a moment, and then collects herself. "I'm afraid you'll have to address that matter of debt in a different court than this one, landlord. We are only here to judge whether Miss Karen is to be evicted from her home today." And I respond with, "Oh, if she wants to stay, I'd be happy to let her, as long as she agrees to continue to abide by the terms of the lease agreement, specifically those clauses outlined above, and pays the debt owed today. I'm going to rule for a 24-hour notice to vacate, unless Miss Karen can produce payment at this moment," said the judge. Karen sits, still, quiet, speechless even. Her lawyer is eyeing the window. I like to think contemplating his decisions in life that led him to this point. Maybe thinking about jumping, I don't know. And the judge says, "Right, a 24-hour notice to vacate. And landlord? Yes? You'll want to file those charges in small claims court, or a higher court if it exceeds the amount that you can legally pursue in small claims." "Already filed, Your Honor," I said. The case has now been resolved, and needless to say, I got a fairly significant bonus, in addition to a slight raise. That is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to drop a like, I'd really appreciate it. And also subscribe if you haven't already. So I'm out of here. Have an awesome day, friends, and until next time.